Hello, and a very warm welcome to the first episode of the Jarrang Email Marketing Podcast. My name is Ben Hocking, Client Success Manager at Jarrang. And this podcast over the coming months is intended to speak to some people in email marketing who are going to have some very interesting stories to share from the world of strategy, data, content, design, everything in between. We're going to be getting some great stories from some really exciting guests. And I'm delighted to say we've got two very good guests for our first episode. So, firstly, joining me, my partner in crime, I guess is the best description. Also, client success manager at Jarrang is Hannah Vaughan. Hannah, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, I like that description. That's good.
Crime is the thing we're best at, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And very delighted to say we've also got Nick Crawford, who is the owner of Twist Consultancy, who deal with the implementation of strategy for businesses and also the head of strategy at Jarrang. So, Nick, thank you very much for joining us.
That's a pleasure. That's a great big intro. That's almost frightening in terms of reaching that ambition this early on. But thank you.
Should I have done it? Should I have done it the other way around and sort of overachieve rather than underachieve? Anyway, yes, thank you very much, both of you, for joining today. We'd thought, since we're in sort of the early part of the year, strategy is a pretty good one to start with, considering it's your area of expertise, Nick, and also time of the year. It seems to make the most sense. A lot of businesses are going to be looking at what their strategy could be for 2021. But before we get into strategy, we're going to ask the question that we're going to ask every single guest as the first off, and the answers are going to vary a lot depending on who we're asking. But Nick, why is email valuable to you specifically?
So I would say that certainly as a channel, and the reason that I've specialized in email is threefold. So one, fundamentally, you own the data that you use for email as a business. So you are not at the mercy of a social platform or a change in algorithm or somebody else's perception of your audience reach or what you're trying to do. You directly own and manage that data. So as we've seen in the times of the pandemic, when there's been so much change, one of the few constants is the ability to reach your own customers directly through email. So for me, that kind of makes it stand out from most of the other channels that are available. Second one is that you can absolutely establish a relationship with your customers or your prospects using email. So because you know something about them, because you're able to kind of reference either their relationship with you or their activities with you, you can help them develop and mature as a customer through kind of first to multiple use and then on to advocacy. And the last one is email is one of the only channels that really allows you an end-to-end view. So you know who you've sent to, what they interacted with, how they interacted, and whether they took that action that you're asking from them from a return of investment and from a impact point of view. So, unlike programmatic or PPC or any of the broadcast channels, it's one of the very few ways that you can actually, for every pound spent, you can say, this is what I got back from it. And that makes it a really powerful tool from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, thank you very much on that. So to move into strategy then, because as I said, I think this is going to be on the lips of many people considering the time of year, perhaps quite broadly, but how do you go about strategy? Because it can be a bit of a daunting topic considering how large the scope is. For businesses out there, for people who are interested in this, Nick, how would you go about it at the beginning of a year to make sure you've got a plan that you can see through for the next 12 months?
Yeah, it's, it is a topic that everyone should kind of consider. I think one of the dangers and one of the things that I've seen with many businesses is that that because everyone is kind of working flat out, they're just trying to kind of keep ahead of their day job, that actually everyone moves really quickly into delivery. So if there's a need for the business or a reaction, is let's get something out there. And so actually the strategy, the bit that should be the foundation for all that activity, is kind of missed. And that's where you can suddenly find yourself out of kilter or actually having to do a load of work and then retro work that because you've changed your mind or changed the plan. So the strategy is your foundation. So it is very much the what you want to achieve before you get into the how. And the kind of way that I sum that up, there's a great, just to kind of change tactic very completely. There's one of my favorite stories is Alice in Wonderland. And there is a great scene in that where Alice first meets the Cheshire Cat in the tree. And to paraphrase it slightly, she says, Cheshire Cat, do you know what way I need to go? And the Cheshire Cat responds and says, well, that depends on where you want to get to. And she says, well, I don't really know. And he says, well, it doesn't matter which way you go then. And for me, that really kind of sums up strategy. Strategy should be about what's the business objective? What's that trying to achieve? And how does that then cascade down into my marketing objectives? And how does that then cascade down into my actual activity? And being able to kind of really articulate and understand that is the kind of first step. And then in terms of kind of being able to how do I strategize, how do I actually do that, then it is about that clear articulation of those objectives of what success looks like for the business, to then be able to say, okay, so if I'm after acquisition or I'm after retention, if I need to increase my profitability, if I need to increase sales or decrease loss or whatever those business success metrics are, how is my marketing going to support that? And therefore, how is my campaigns going to support that?
Yeah, I think in a lot of instances, people are more creative than they think they are in terms of idea generation. And I do agree that sometimes you do get that idea. And I think everyone is guilty of this sometimes, where you get an idea, you're so passionate about this idea that you've come up with that you do just want to go full steam ahead into it before thinking about exactly how you execute and the strategy behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think no, not at all. I think there is a place for that innovation and for that agile, left of field thinking, but you can't run your whole business in that kind of way. So the strategy that kind of gives you this is what we want to achieve, that then allows you to be very clear about what your tactical execution is going to be, sets your business as usual. This is how we kind of implement, this is the resource we need, this is the cost, this is the ways of working, so that you're there 80% of the time with a kind of clear end-to-end way of working, which then allows you a bit of headspace and a bit of maneuverability to go, actually, we're going to react to this thing and let's do something really quick and really, really smart to be able to kind of latch onto that. But it's not at the detriment of the kind of foundation work that we're kind of working to. Whereas if you're kind of bouncing around on everything and everything is a bit kind of chaotic and starting from scratch every time, it's really hard to kind of to be able to kind of maintain any optimal way of working. So you become unprofitable, you become resource heavy, and often you have no idea if what you're doing is making a difference or having any impact at all, because you've got no form of kind of measurement or KPI that you're comparing results to actual cost.
And Hannah, so you've been with Jarrang since the sort of tail end of 2018. So this is your third start of year almost in terms of strategy. What have you picked up over the years? Sort of what tips would you share with people who are interested in strategy at this time of year?
Yeah, so I try to get a kind of plan or schedule for the client, for every single client, just to look at what their busier times of year are. A lot of my clients have sort of peaks and troughs of activity. So it's good to kind of have like a shared document that you can both see, I can see, the client can see from both sides, to look at pinpointing or penciling in some sends that they know are going to go ahead. And I find that once you've got those plugged in, it doesn't have to be in much detail, but if you know that you're busy over Black Friday, you're busy over Mother's Day, getting those in, and that's almost like the framework for you to then be a bit more flexible or spontaneous with other sends, because you've already kind of planned those bits in. So I think from my point of view, having a plan in place is the most useful tool, and just to know what's coming up.
And that actually segues quite nicely onto the next question, which is relating to strategy in 2021 very specifically. As we know, sort of strategy in most years, you'll be able to predict what's going to happen throughout the year. Yes, you might be wrong on a few things, but you're generally not going to be too far wrong. 2021, different story. I'm certainly not predicting what the world's going to look like in 2 weeks, let alone the rest of this year. So Nick, should strategy become more adaptable? Should people be doing anything different because it's 2021?
I would suggest conversely, it's even more reason to be strategic, because so part of that strategy, if we're going to break it down to some key phases, so you've got some kind of discovery, some kind of landscape of a situational analysis of going, where are we, what are we doing so far, where do we want to get to? Then you move into some kind of discovery of, right, what are the options, what could we do? And then you move into your solution, and that then kind of fixes your path for a 3 or a 6 month or a 12-month period that actually then feeds your tactical. And as part of that, one of the analytics ways of approaching strategy is to use a pestle framework. So that's where you're looking at the political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental influences that might impact your business and your marketing. So you can use it in different ways. You can use it big or you can use it small. And I would suggest that a lot of businesses probably don't do that, and therefore actually aren't already considering those influences that are going to occur and impact on their business and therefore on their marketing. So by actually being more strategic, it should help protect a business and mitigate risk, and also find those opportunities. So as much as there is a lot of trouble that comes from change, there is also a lot of opportunity that comes from that. And we've seen, as much for every business that's kind of really struggled during the pandemic, there have been businesses that have really been able to kind of flourish and take advantage of it. So it's being strategic to find those opportunities, to know where to focus your activity rather than just almost pinballing between things to actually kind of try and make it work.
What are your thoughts on that, Hannah? Do you think a more difficult world to predict makes strategy all that more important?
Yeah, I think so. I think the best kind of advice is to just have as much as you can in place, and then leave the kind of little bits to the sort of final bit to change. So if you've got a campaign that's going to send, but you're not quite sure about what the wordings might be or what the restrictions might be that we had recently with the latest lockdown, just get as much as you can in place, and then just leave those little bits that you can be more reactive with. But I think also just be kind to yourself as well. It's tough and it's hard to kind of keep chopping and changing, and everyone's kind of doing their best. And I think if you can remain reactionary, then that's good.
And I think it's certainly with just an email filter on, again, lots of businesses have remembered and remind themselves just how important that channel is to their customers and to their prospects. Yeah. And therefore, as that part of that, the strategy of what is our marketing plan for this year, actually, where does email sit within each of the channels that you have available to you? And this sense of, okay, we may have to shift, it's not just about presenting a product or a solution and hoping somebody gets that. Actually, we need to inform, we need to kind of, to a certain extent, entertain, and remember that there are, this is not data, this is individuals at the end of every send that we make, and actually work really hard to ensure that we are humanizing the marketing that we're doing. This beautiful blend of art and science that is marketing, I think is should actually be front of mind in terms of that strategy of ways of working.
Yeah, and I think in terms of content that will obviously be dictated by the strategy. In previous years, it might have been a case where you know exactly what you're going to do for the next 12 months, and very little will change. One thing I would say is that it is okay to put something in place and then to adapt as the year goes on. That the content that is, as long as it is still feeding into that overriding strategy, I don't see a problem in that whatsoever. It is difficult to predict exactly what's going to happen, but as long as that strategy is in place, those who have got it in place are going to be far better off than those who don't. Speaking specifically about sort of goals, I want to get your views on this, Nick, because you can set very clear goals in terms of numbers, in terms of you want to increase this by X amount, this by X percentage. Do you think that goals need to be that specific? Do you think that they need to go into the numbers, or do you think they should be perhaps slightly more generic?
So I think So I think numbers in terms of campaign activity should be specific, or at least be very deliberate as to why they're not specific. So if you are, and again, it will depend on your type of business. So if, for example, you're a recruitment business and actually all of your emails are about getting someone to pick up the phone and talk to you, then it becomes much harder to measure. But if you're an e-commerce business, then clearly there should be a very clear correlation between the volume that I've delivered to the amount of open click conversion and what's the revenue that's driving that, and how do I then optimize that. What I would say is that, again, this mixture of kind of strategy into tactical, that is a very tactical view. So, that's a moment in time. What a business should also be doing is having a longer term picture on that. So actually, fundamentally, yes, the delivery of revenue by a channel is important, but actually over time, what's the value of my customer? What's my lifetime value of a customer? Because that might be very different year one than it is year three. How do I move and progress a cohort of my supporters to become more valuable, more profitable to me, or to turn them into my VIPs? So I think those bigger picture metrics of lifetime value, net promoter score, brand awareness, all of your tactical activity feeds into that, but may not have a direct correlation, but it allows you to have a more holistic view of the success of your business and your marketing.
Yeah, I actually want to pick up on sort of lifetime value and brand awareness, because I think it's something that's been brought to the forefront in the last sort of year or so. We had many businesses where they aren't able to get that quick sell, as has usually been the case in the past. We saw, hotels close. We're still seeing that now. Hannah, do you think that brand emails have had a bit of a resurgence, and do you think that that should continue on even when these businesses are going to get more opportunity to sell like normal again?
Yeah, definitely. I think during a time that we're going through at the moment, it's important to stay in the top of people's minds and interests. And if you can sort of send more of those soft sell emails, that I like to call them, rather than hard sell, where you might not be promoting bookings or travel or anything like that at the moment, I think that's only going to do your brand good. And it could be, recipes, it could be workout videos, it could be, different ways to use our product, blogs, anything that kind of is in line with your brand and in line with your tone of voice is only going to do better for your audience. And when people do come back to booking holidays and we're opening up the markets again, you're going to be at the top of their memory because you stayed in contact with them and you were there for them during that time. And I think it's very important to keep up communications.
Yeah, I think it's spot on there, Hannah. And this is kind of part of what I was talking about, this humanization of your marketing. So, there are great examples from some of the banks and building societies where they, in terms of their communication, it wasn't just about here's how we're deep cleaning our branches, or here's what's happening in our response to COVID, but it was more about, if you need to talk to someone, we have maximized our call center and there is someone here to talk to you if needs be. Or exercise videos or well-being. It might not be directly what your brand does, but it was just a way of maintaining that relationship and showing that the business cared. And you're right, there will be a pent-up demand for a lot of travel and leisure when the vaccine finally is enough for us to be able to go. So it's there, the business is there to be had, it's stored up, and it's then about, actually, as a consumer, what's my choice and who do I go with first? The brand that stayed in touch, entertained me, made me feel like they cared, or the brand that just kept going, we've got cheaper rooms while demand wasn't there.
Yeah, I would agree completely with that, and sort of brand awareness becoming or remaining as such an important part of strategy as you go throughout the year. Ultimately, and I like the sort of soft sell versus hard sell element, because a lot of people will sort of refer to those sorts of emails as salesy emails and non-sales emails, which I think is completely incorrect to categorize them like that, because a non-sales email is not there not to get sales, if that makes sense. It's there for more of a longer term value. It's almost that short term gain versus that long term value. And ultimately, I think brand email should definitely stay there. I think it's in the past been slightly neglected just because seeing the value in those emails is more difficult. It's not there on the surface. If you've got those short-term gains by this now, generally speaking, you'll see the revenue straight away, and it's very, very easy to determine how well it's done. Whereas longer term, you have to sort of go underneath the surface and really explore what that value is, and you'll generally find it, but you've got to make that effort to do it in the first place.
Yeah.
So yeah, really interesting.
There is a way of auditing your content by measuring whether what you're sending is an ask or a give. So ask is in terms of buy me, and even an offer or a discount is a ask because you're still asking someone to spend money with you, as opposed to a give. So all of this we're talking about our kind of brand. So actually, we care. This is how you can get in contact. This is how we want to help your mental state. All of that is kind of giving. And often when you look at it through that filter and kind of almost take your 3 month sends and go, right, well, how much of this is an ask, how much is given, what's that percentage, you will typically find that probably 80%, if not more, of your content is an ask. And therefore, actually, the owners, you're just taking and taking. So if you can then deliberately start to shift that and use your brand awareness or your net promoter score or those the bigger business measures that we were talking about to be able to justify the effort and resource, then actually, in theory, it allows you to become more profitable, because brand advocacy is a way of staying more and more profitable than always having to find the new customer because you're churning through and because your overall experience is not as good as it could be.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know how much cheaper it is to keep existing versus getting in new ones. No doubt about that whatsoever. I'd like to move on to our sort of secondary topic, which is more relating to data and businesses maximizing their data in 2021. I mean, my view on data is that it is the absolute start and end point of all email marketing. If you don't have the data, you're not going to be able to send to anyone. If you do have a lot of data and you have profile fields and you're not using them, it's a massive missed opportunity. So Nick, I wanted to get your views on how important it is to sort of review your data at this time of year and use that going forward.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. So both of you will know that I have this phrase in terms of data being the ugly baby of marketing. That a lot of us know that we need to love it, but we don't necessarily want to give it a hug. And I think that is true. Not many people go into marketing because they love data. If they did, they would be, an analyst or a data science. And so it's something that we kind of need to come to terms with. But yes, absolutely, data is the foundation of everything. The only caveat or consideration for that I would give you is that you may have a number of people that you have very limited data on, certainly if you've just collected your email address. So there are some other considerations on those early stages in terms of you may not always be able to be as relevant as you want to be, but you can certainly stop yourself from being irrelevant by looking at that customer experience and where that customer is likely to be in their relationship with you. So again, that's the art and science coming together. Can I entertain and inform as well as be more tactical in my content? But then your data strategy should be about how can I enhance the data that I have so that it grows and that I can then begin to use it far more tactically and targeted in what I've got. So yes, understanding your data is absolutely one of the ways to do that is potentially to start to look at whether your business and you have a data dictionary. So this is a way of being able to go, what data is available to me? What is held within my marketing system or my CRM system, or actually in the multiple systems I might be using in my business? And is there a way that I can start to join that? And do I understand it? Do I understand the context? Do I understand what I've got available to me so that I know what I can use for today? And actually then I can start to plan what I might want to do in the future, coming back to our strategy. And then actually, how do I start to put together a data enhancement, a data growth program to start to develop that as well?
Yeah, I think just add to that, it's interesting that even though data is just kind of binary and numbers, you don't think it's the most creative or exciting thing. It allows you to be creative and it allows you to be more exciting with your emails and make them more bespoke. So it's kind of it's one of those things that you need to have, I guess.
And one of the things that we really started to push in Q4 of last year and are continuing to do so throughout this year, hyper personalization is something that we've introduced. There might well be a podcast on it in the next couple of months, so stick around for that one. But that ultimately is a combination of excellent design and having the data in place. It's almost bringing that data to life, and you look at it and you in a lot of cases it's really lovely content, and you can forget that actually it's the data that where that all starts and finishes. Looking at sort of profile fields and maximizing your data, Nick, I'm sure there are going to be a lot of businesses in a position where they have a subscriber base where they've got a large number there, but they don't necessarily have a lot of profile field data, and want to obtain it. What are the methods by which you can do that without being disruptive?
Yeah, so fundamentally, as two easy examples for how to kind of develop your data. And email was a great way of being able to kind of do this, because again, you've got that direct relationship. You know exactly who you've sent to and who's responding. So to put those two things together makes it much, much simpler than a lot of the other channels. So fundamentally, the simplest and quickest way of doing it is to ask your customers to kind of provide data for you. Now, the trick here is to make sure that when you're asking, there is some understanding of that there is a value to it. If I give something, what do I get back? So we come back to our ask and kind of give, push and pull. And then how effortless can you make that process? So it might be that actually you start really simple. So if we take a hotel brand, so if they've got hotels both on the coast and rural, then actually you could very simply put together an email that's got two images, one coastal, one rural, and says, what's your dream destination, or what's your mood for today? And you collect that click, and then that allows you to then start to then use those responses to become more tailored in what you're doing in the future. One of the other ways of doing it is to actually use your preference center and enhance your preference center. So preference centers are not just about how do you want to be contacted, what's your channel, but actually can be about collecting date of birth, for example. And again, we put this in fact that when you're collecting information, often starting simple and then expanding and trickle feeding that data is a much more effective approach than asking someone to complete a lot of information right up front when they haven't yet really established a relationship with you, haven't really established where the value is. So just using name and email address to get somebody to allow you to send to them is a good starting point. And then you can start to, through your welcome journey and your onward journeys, start to develop that. So, we'd love to send you a surprise and a treat on your birthday. There's the give. Okay, I'm probably going to give you my birthday because I would like some of that. What's your favorite locations, or what's your reasons for travel, if we kind of just keep with the hotel model for the moment? Where in what month do you tend to kind of book your holiday? So the information that somebody can obviously see, that actually if that's provided, the expectation is that then the next set of communications that you get are far more relevant, far more tailored, far more helpful, and therefore it becomes mutually beneficial, and you start to enhance the data that you hold on your individuals.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, if you look at studies and surveys of why do people unsubscribe from emails generally, and there's plenty out there, you look at the common theme and it will always be a top 2 or 3 answer is that the emails aren't relevant enough to me. Ultimately, obtaining that profile data gives the opportunity to be more relevant, which is what people want. And
actually they're linked. So I sit on the Data and Marketing Association, the DMA's email council, and they issue every year both a consumer tracker and a marketeer's tracker for email. And within that consumer's tracker, the top reasons for unsubscribe are its volume and lack of control over content, and it's irrelevant. And I think all of those are probably combined. Actually, they all overlink. So I've been in a number of focus groups in my time where an individual will say, actually, I'll get fed up. I sign up and I get bombarded by email and I hate it. But as you continue that conversation, and again, if we just stick with kind of travel and leisure for a moment, when you start talking about, well, why do you travel? And you go, well, it's either because I love food, or actually I love entertainment and I love this kind of music, and I'll go to a gig that's being hosted for, and I'll stay in a room. And then they sort of say, and I want to hear everything. I don't want to, if it's my type of music, tell me everything you can about where I can see it and what's going to happen. And so actually, because it's relevant, the volume piece doesn't even come into it. And that's your balancing act. The more useful. It's a little bit like people go, I hate cold calling. And most people do. But actually, if your Sky subscription is about to expire and BT phone you and I've got, say you've got a half price deal for new subscribers, actually that becomes convenient and coincidental. It doesn't become jarring. And that's what the relevancy does for you, or the relevance, to use, ignoring the grammar for a second.
And looking at sort of segmented sends versus send to all sends, Hannah, you'd have had plenty of experience of both. How much value do you see in those campaigns that are able to be segmented?
Yeah, so much value, just because you're speaking to those people on a kind of one-to-one basis of what it is that they're interested in. Like Nick said, you could do all sorts of things, whether they're a prospect or a customer, you're going to speak to a potential customer a lot differently to a loyal customer. And that can just be down to tone of voice. Or it could be postcode, local and national. You're going to be upselling, if you own a hotel, you're going to be upselling restaurants to a local audience, whereas you won't be selling that to a national audience because they're too far away. They're not bothered about booking dinner. So it's very useful about making the emails more bespoke to the person.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll move on to our final section of today's podcast, which is a bit of show and tell that, Nick, you've done for us. So we've asked you to select an email that you particularly like. For those who are watching on video, we'll actually put that on the screen. For those who are listening on audio, we'll put that link in the description. But Nick, you've decided to go with pizza, which means you've got a thumbs up from me already. But just go through exactly why you like this email.
Yeah, so it's from a company called, well, I pronounce it Uni. I don't know if there's a proper way. I probably should have checked that before today. But it's OONI. And there's a couple of things that I kind of like, specifically about the kind of email itself, but actually what happens before that. And if we kind of take into account that the majority of people, when asked why they open an email, it's about actually their relationship with the brand and what they've seen before, not about the subject line and what it might contain at that moment in time. It's sort of important that actually to understand that the relationship you've got with your prospects and your customers is the biggest driver to whether they're going to open your email or not. And Uni, effectively as a business, offer really lovely, well-designed, well-made wood, coal and gas-fired pizza ovens for use in tabletop and gardens. But actually all of their content and the way they approach this is not about the oven itself, but it's about the joy and the love of making pizza and bringing family and friends together, the culture of. So the email that I've chosen is actually the first one in their welcome series. So if you sign up, this is the kind of first one that you get. And yes, there is kind of product in there. And yes, they've got some fantastic photography. So it entertains before you've even started, just in the look and feel. But actually, the email is as much about joining their kind of pizza experts and learning more about pizza. It's about how easy it is to create your own kind of pizza, the difference in flavor and excitement and taste that you'll get from your own home-fired pizza than if you're kind of buying it from the shop. And that's its lead. And it's almost and if you want to buy one, that's okay. But that's not that's not where their focus is. So I just really like the tone, the approach, the look and feel of it, the fact that it is about a lifestyle and things that are kind of exciting and entertain me. It's giving me access to a load of content from videos and social in terms of this kind of love of pizza, and almost a secondary thought that says, and if you happen to want to buy one, that's absolutely fine. And strangely, for Christmas, I got a pizza oven, and I can tell you now, it is the best pizza outside of Italy that I've ever had. So yeah,
That's a big call. That's a big call saying that. We're going to have to try some now. You're going to have to send it in the post or something. That's a big shout.
Yeah, it is a glowing review.
The travel bag. So when times are different, when we next have the opportunity to meet up, I'll see if I can fit the pizza oven in the car, and we'll add that to the list of ways to share.
I'll wait for that already. I find it very interesting that you've picked up on sort of the experience and how much they focus on that. This is something I harp on about all the time, is that there are too many businesses that focus on the means by which you achieve the experience that they're selling. I forget the quote itself. I'm sure somebody will be able to correct me on this, but Apple, for example, if you were to ask Apple, what do they sell? They don't say that they sell phones. They don't say that they sell devices. They say that they sell dreams or something along those lines, which is the whole point of it. That's what you're selling. It's just, the product is the means by which you achieve it. So I think it's great that a business like that is focusing on that overall experience and lifestyle. And the pizza oven itself, whilst obviously a brilliant product, is just the means by which that gets achieved.
Yeah. And if I put my marketing hat back on, much as I'm still thinking about pizza, but actually, it's a considered purchase. They're not the cheapest way of kind of being able to kind of get your pizza oven, but the quality stands. But actually, if I've bought one, then what happens? If I've just gone by product, if that's where I've pushed it, and I've bought one, where's the long term? Whereas actually, I'm already, Uni are already creating that sense of community. They're already creating that sense of keep coming back and watching our videos and joining in our lifestyle, which then clearly means that if I want to get the right wood or the right next pan to use or the next thing that they're going to, my apron, then I'm likely to look at them first before I look anywhere else. And I will continue to consume their content. I will continue to share, the content with my friends, etc. And that's great marketing, because actually it starts to build a world of its own. If it was just, we've got some pizza ovens, do you want one? Thank you very much. All of the rest of that disappears, and there's no longevity, no relationship with that.
Yeah, I kind of agree on the whole, even though it's about the product, it's not really about the product. There's a few kind of brands that I love purely for the packaging that they put stuff in. It's not really down to the product. So I guess it's kind of dressing it up in the right way.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with us, Nick. And I think we'll leave that there. So my thanks obviously go out to Nick and Hannah, who've been able to provide their insight today on strategy and data and everything else in between. I'll be back with a new episode next month, so stay tuned for that one. But until then, stay safe.